Thank you so much, Aurelio. Thank you for taking your time. First thing we always ask about the soul journey. What maybe if you could just share a bit about your connection with Mother and Sri Aurobindo.
Oops.
Just very briefly, maybe just how did it touch you?
Yeah, it's almost a lifetime journey in one way. I encountered them in my early 20s and had been in Pondicherry, 85. Stayed mostly in the ashram at that time. I felt Auroville was a bit too rough for me. But I was actually immediately plugged in a very beautiful space because there was a conference bringing the ashram and Auroville together on healing. It was called Healing in Evolution. And I was very fascinated because there were some beautiful personalities and experts there. And somehow that was also my entry gate into Auroville. I said, yeah, I want to be part of a wholesome evolution. And maybe what Mother and Sri Aurobindo really brought into my life, I had been looking for lost paradise quite a bit of my life, and it was kind of like going back to the origin of humanity. I did music ethnological studies, but at one point it came, what about the future? And this is where Sri Aurobindo comes in a very amazing way, because I consider him a poet, seer of the Vedic age, who basically lays out for us what's in front of us, the possibility and the potential of human evolution. And that was just really inspiring, and then wanted to participate in it. And then, of course, we know Auroville is an experimental lab, so things are not going as smooth as things because we are in a transformative process. I'm still enthusiastic about it because I feel like a big part of the yoga is actually how we manage to receive and manifest through our instrumentation the new energy, the new vibration, the new creation. And that's a very interesting process because it doesn't depend on old yogic practices. I remember had interviewed people in the ashram. The mother always furthered all the artists. As Sri Aurobindo was working with the poets, the mother was working in theater, with the musicians, with the dancers, in the visual arts. And I think that is the process which is needed for the manifestation of the new creation. To receive it, to listen, to perceive, to sense it, and see what it means when this new energy can work through us.
Thank you, Aurelio. Next, could you share a little bit about your first experience with the plays and Sri Aurobindo plays, maybe, and briefly, specifically with Sri Aurobindo plays. When was the first time when you started working with Aurobindo?
As much as I remember, I think it was the Ascent to Truth, which is this beautiful play of the mother where she describes 7 stages on the ascent to truth. And in the musical structure, 7 means the 7 tones of the scales. And then I felt inspired, hey, we could use a drone for each scene and rise, kind of like it was not as recognizable. Because, there's a break, and then we brought in a different drone. But I really was rising through those stages. I don't know if the actors or the audience perceived it, but in the last stage, basically, we were on the octave. So we were rising through the whole place through 7 vibrational levels and came out on the top. And for the musicians, I remember it was a very deep experience because we felt like we were really rising, and then we were elated at the end of the play. And one beautiful thing for me, so that was the first experience, and it always brought in experience. I think to many people who participated in Sri Aurobindo's plays and the productions with Aryamani, that many people had deep experiences. Because once I think the mantric quality of Sri Aurobindo's works came out. You have to work with the text, you repeat it, you are kind of like in 30, 40 rehearsals, and it sinks. Each time you visit it, and then a very beautiful thing which inspired many of us, once, we have 2, 3 shows or something like this, and then it's done. Half a year's work. But then the words, they stick on, and it can be that after months the words came, phrases, some sentences, key sentences, they came back again and again in situations. Or when it so happened that I was reading through a text of Sri Aurobindo and met some of those wordings, zip, immediately the scene and the melody was there. So it always felt like that with that work and ourselves offering into it, that it was part of a transformational process.
Do you see any difference of quality? I mean, mostly shared, but also from working with other plays and shared with those plays specifically, and also working in the Matri Mandir, the area. How was it for you working with the sound?
Sure. I mean, there was always kind of like, of course, one tries to do the best one can. And I have to admit, so I went through many different processes of, really trying to find what's the best way of bringing the sound in, what would it take. And in one way, what I really enjoyed in the place, I think it was also working with Arimani, was that there was always an unknown there. I somehow never knew what it would be. And for the first time, sometimes reading the script was like, what to do with this one? But in the process, because everybody worked with such a sincerity, I think that's one of the keys. Everybody brought in such a sincerity into the place, dedication, effort, and that created an atmosphere that everything emerged out of this. I don't know if it was the same with the costumes, for instance, but in the music, it was always like I had some ideas, or maybe I had an inspiration, or we should use this instrument in this play. But everything around it unfolded naturally, and I learned in the later plays, basically in Matri Mandir, that I don't have to worry. I just have to trust and surrender, and the right thing will unfold.
Thank you. Were there any internal challenges? I mean, apart from, I'm sure, external, but also what were the challenges for you doing creating music or the sound for this?
Yeah, in one way, I think a big challenge, because, for instance, you work with Savitri, the energy of it is so high, and then there's a little bit this humility. What can we do to match that grandeur, to match the depth and the precision of it? Are our means adequate to express that height of the poetry and of the mantric value of the text? And but I think for me it was like a a whole system experience. And in one way a test of how far we are in our instrumentation. Do I have the mental concentration? Can I be focused enough? And that was often very challenging, because working with the Sri Aurobindo Swartz, one wants to be really precise. Do I have the right emotion? Does it come from the right level of the vitality? Is it pure enough? Yeah. And then also often, how to say, even physically very demanding. The rehearsals, long rehearsals, and with the music, everybody goes home, and then we have to back all the sound system and stuff like this. So often it was very exhausting in one way, but I think there was always the delight there that we are participating. I'm saying that almost like in a yajna. In a yajna, you have to do all these preparations for the offering, and when it's happening, but eventually you're completely nourished by it.
Wow, I just can't even imagine the entire process. Beautiful, beautiful. Anything you want to add?
I think that at a certain moment we had this, that for us was a big shifting from the auditorium, the Sri Aurobindo auditorium, to the Matri Mandir space. Because, you have done the plays that are big things, big performances, and there is a large public, and so I think this was a particular experience, but I believe that it prepared us to come to the Matri Mandir. And maybe we can explore a little bit what was this difference, for example, for you.
The shift.
Then this shift, for coming to the Matri Mandir space. And one thing with Aurelio is, I think along the years we have built up a kind of a trust, this kind of, it's something that flows between us, because I don't know what I'm asking him. I'm asking him to follow what he can discover. In fact, he discovered how to, what he said, no, how to manifest this that corresponds to the Savitri or to the place. So he, for him also it's a big challenge because I know what I don't want.
Yeah.
And this I can tell him, Aurelio, this no, I don't. This I can say, even to the actors, I know what I don't want. And I know where I want to come. So we need to have this quality, we have to achieve this uplifting experience. And nothing is in our hands, in fact. And I think this trust is something that was very beautiful, I think was built along the years. And for him, I believe it's a big challenge, because we have no...
You know where I could trust actually really in, I think what the artistically possibly what where Aremani and myself we are somehow in a sync. I think it's like minimalism, essential things. It's not about how to say too much of too many things and stuff like this. And so and often Aremani and that's my search also. She said no, it's no, we don't need music. I need supportive sound. We need the atmosphere of it, and I think that was also the different working. Let's say working in a theater, it's like in a black box, and you have to create everything. Yeah. In one way, it's a big gift of working in a space like Madhumandir in the gardens, because I think the place, or what we wanted to convey mostly also, is about atmosphere. There is a content, but the content, you can read about the content, you can read the play. So if you create a play, you want to convey an experience. And there we highly benefit from this amazing environment in Madhumandir Gardens because it's really charged. And so for me, it's easier to work in the gardens because I remember we working there at the fountain. There was this little waterfall, and then I realized as subtle you usually don't hear it, but we used it consciously in the place when we switch it off, switch it on, and it really makes a big difference. So I think there for me, working outdoors in that context, we are embedding whatever we do in the natural atmosphere. But of course, what I realized also out there, I need the support of electronics. Because if I come with live sounds only, the live sounds are in the same range to the speaking voice, and then I would interfere into the spoken voice of the actors. But with an electronic sound, it can actually embed it, it can hold it, it can surround it and stuff. So it was this interesting process for me in the gardens to enhance, to recreate the atmosphere of what is already there. And usually with the live instruments, every character has his own instrument signification, its sounds, and it was like only marking, enhancing, supporting the power of the voice, basically, the power of the verse in one voice. So that was a good learning for me also in the outdoor environment.
One thing which is coming, Aurelio, was many people when we interviewed and we asked, most of them, they spoke about how it was not really a performance, but it was a presence, and I think sound plays a very big part in holding that presence, or just or making it visible or making it felt. You just touched upon, and I was very curious. You spoke about when the minimalism, when to use and sometimes when to hold back.
Yeah.
Could you share maybe a little bit more about the things which are spoken and sometimes not spoken? How do we hold both? How do you did that maybe?
Yeah. I hope actually that you would also interview Jean, who did the light for so many plays, because in one way, between Jean and me, there was always this unspoken communication, because I felt like what he tried to do with the light to enhance some scenes and bring forward, and he is very precise and conscious about how he uses the light. And so for me that was very beautiful. I always felt like we were both playing with waves. He was playing with light waves, and I was playing with sound waves, and in one way maybe only to shape the etheric body of the whole thing. And you said it right, actually. I think we should rather use the word transformance than performance in when we're going through a form. And definitely, when I said we all worked with a deep sincerity in the place, and Arimani has the gift actually of really bringing those souls together who are in that inner movement. And so that space of offering, I think it was always an offering. It was definitely not a show. We were not there to show something. We created something, we intensified our sadhana, and through this one actually I think we could communicate something. Often when the program was over, there was also such a joy in the team, and we said, oh my God, would it be possible to bring that enthusiasm and that togetherness, could we bring it in other domains of Auroville? Could we actually work in the town hall in that way? Could we work in governments? Could we work in finances? Could we work in education with that enthusiasm? So that was an aspiration. Often when we finish this, how can we bring that now into the other domains of Auroville? And that's why I think it's the biggest gift of the creative domain, because one has the liberty. And in the creative domain, one is invited to experiment. I think we should actually experiment in all ways and arenas of Auroville in a similar way. And then we would fulfill the call for the laboratory of evolution.
Was there any aha moment?
Yeah, I think it was the second last play where I felt like, oh, there's no dramatism, there's no curve in it. It's just recitation of wisdom and what you do and what would it mean for the audience. And I really did not feel inspired. I said, no, we cannot bring, that's a kind of like philosophical monologue or something. Like, why would you bring something on stage like this at all? So I had even some resistance, and I put it aside, and I said, okay, here it is. If it needs to happen, give me some inspiration. Yeah. So the aha moment was that actually from something which I almost resisted, yeah, but because I trusted the process, that eventually it came out, and it came out very beautiful. Without my doing, or kind of besides my resistances in that way. And then when it happened and it turned out very beautiful, I said, you see, even that way it works. Yeah. And that was like a miracle in one way, because after all, I think Arimani is also a very special director, because she's almost, we say always, she is actually a director which is non-directing. In one way, she's clear what shouldn't happen, but she completely gives that space for everybody that they create from within. In that way. So sometimes maybe we even miss this direction, but I think also it allows the magic to unfold. And then actually each one of the participants feel that we are all co-creating it. I think that's the beauty of the place, that it were really exemplar co-creation. Yeah, without even aiming for a result. It was, let's do it, let's dedicate all our efforts and our energy into it, and we trust the outcome. Of course we could trust it because we were guided by Sri Aurobindo's words.
And I would say that to work with Sri Aurobindo's texts, we don't need to have professional skills. I believe that if you are a great professional, it can be even difficult to enter into Sri Aurobindo's texts, and vision of what he wrote. That you can call that place. But that's why the only thing that I insist so much for the actors, for the
Participants.
Yeah, is the presence. So that's why we have to work so much with the body. It is very important to work with the body and to call the presence. And I keep telling them, without the presence, there is nothing. You cannot do that if you do not have the presence. Then it becomes this kind of a recitation, no? It is somehow empty, no? Because you have only words coming from our mouth. But with this presence, indeed, I believe that people are trying their best just to call this presence.
You know what, actually, what comes to me is actually, you said, it's not professionalism which is needed. Of course, we want to be as perfect and as good as possible. But I actually, as a pendant, I said, it's the psychic. If the psychic presence is there, if the psychic dedication is there, that makes all the difference. No, and I think that's what also people from the participants attract us to work with you, because the focus is on the psychic presence. It's on an inner presence and how that can unfold. Yeah? And I think actually if that focus is there also on the inner presence, the outer needs and perfection will unfold from it. No? One has to polish and one has to work and one has to train, but we try to be there with the core of it, with the core of expression in that way.
I have a question here to Aurelio. Aurelio, do you feel that you have made I believe you do, but maybe you can talk about that, say something about that. A kind of a progress, a kind of inner and outer progress from these last 20 years I've been working. So during all these projects, so you felt or you feel or that you have, in your musician capacity, in your inner being, you feel that you have which kind of progress? Of course you have.
Yeah.
But can you say something about that?
I think, you know what, for me, each production, let's call it that way, yeah, each one was an adventure. Each one for me was an intensified sadhana. That's what it is. We are here to live our sadhana and let it express in all our activities. But in a play, in a production, one is challenged in so many different ways. And so I can say like this, you know what, I've been in monastic setups and in Buddhist meditation, and then once a year you go for a deep retreat for 2 weeks in silence and stuff like this. And I can say for me that the productions, they were those intensified moments in the process of the yearly sadhana. And definitely with each production there was a very deep enrichment from the content, from Sri Aurobindo's texts and the verses from the experience, the artistic work of groping, not knowing, and then having to refine certain things, and being open also. I like to work, collaborate with different musicians, so whoever was around, I said, hey, there's something happening, come in. If I felt like the inner capacity was there. That was a big learning, you know, to also surrender into the process and hand it over, like with Nada Prem, no? Because he's a very professional musician, and to kind of like let him take the stage. And that was a beautiful process for me, because then I felt like I just held the space. And because he's a composer and he did it all. But it was also interesting to see that he needed that presence again. Yeah. So I think I grew humanly, I grew artistically, and definitely always I was very grateful for the intensification of the sadhana process, if you can call it that way.
Yeah. Just so precise and lovely. Thank you, Aurelio. Thank you so much. It was such a
If you have anything else to say.
exactly.
Yeah.
If there's anything else.
Yeah, then of course the next question would be, what next?
Yeah.
And I'm always scared. It's like, oh my God, you know what's coming next? What is the next? And I know when Arimani, she said, oh, would you have some time? Can you pass by? But you know, at the same time, there's this thing, oh yeah, what is it? There's this spirit of adventure. And I think that's what we're missing in many arenas in our world. It's the adventure of consciousness. Come on, the new creation cannot happen from what we know. We have to risk, we have to dare, we have to lose, we have to not know. You know, we have to get lost in stuff like this. But if that's the beauty of a production, because in one-way production, I think if you look from system organization, a production in itself is it's like a birth. It's like a pregnancy, it's like a birth, you bring something forth, it's a creation. No? And so I think we participate in the creation process, and actually we are all here to participate in the new creation process. And so those little bits and pieces, and I think in our really many projects, in building projects, in research projects, that's what people experience. And hopefully we will manage to bring that co-creative kind of like dedicated efforts in those processes, that we can bring it in larger communal things. That's the hope. I mean, in a communal way for Auroville, because we're amazing people. We have amazing projects running and stuff like this, but in the collective, we're very weak.